Hey, nice thumbnail, huh? That one's from my camera, canted at some strange angle on my desk as I was reaching to go and put it up onto the top of my little computer. Well, we are quite a bit of the way through Anyone Got a Match by Max Schulman. Now, in my experience with this book, sometimes right here is where people bounce off it. And so I'm taking this moment to reassure you that although things get messy, nothing goes splat. This is a novel about the people, the decisions they make, the things that come of it, and it doesn't ever drop the ball on that. So, in case you're starting to say, wait a minute, I don't like these characters anymore, or anything that's going on with that, stay with it. The author loves you and the characters. Things are going places. So, let's continue with chapter 15. As you may have recalled, Paulie has come from Hollywood to Owens Mill. So all the protagonists are going to be there. Clendenin is on his way as well. And onwards. Chapter 15. Paulie and Ira woke the next morning with hangovers that made death seem like a month in the country. Thereafter, out of regard for their livers and eyeballs, they reduced their alcohol intake to submorbid levels. But drink, they did. Every day, Ira went to the campus and worked hard on the television show, while Paulie lunched with Virgil. Sometimes there were just the two of them. Sometimes they were joined by the better talkers on the Acanthus faculty, most often Dr. Selenko and Lyndon Evarts. Then, each night, Paulie and Ira met in their suite and ingested martinis until they could commune sociably, if not amorously. Thus passed 20 days. Ira worked prodigiously, lushed amply, dwelt in a state of truce with his wife, and achingly refrained from phoning or visiting Boo. Labor plus vodka combined to keep his life tolerable. Miserable, to be sure, but tolerably miserable. At 9 a.m., December 18th, the day the Acanthus telecast was to go on the air, Clendenin arrived in Owens Mill with Dr. Andrew McAndrews. From the airport, they went to the campus and located Ira to the impromptu TV studio he had caused to be built in the Acanthus gymnasium. Lined up against all four walls of somewhat like the booths in a church bazaar were the sets. In the center of the floor stood a jungle of cameras, microphones, lights, and sound equipment. A large minivan, in fact, a converted house trailer, was parked alongside one wall. This was the control booth. Along the front ran a window. Inside were three small TV sets, monitors, as they are called, and a console studded with dials and switches. From this console, the technical director and his staff would regulate the shooting and transmission of the show. Behind the console were two rows of easy chairs where important personages from the sponsor, the network, and the agency could sit in comfort and watch the show on the monitors. And everywhere in the gym, technicians were building, painting, adjusting, testing, yelling, and running to Ira with their problems. Ira was adjusting a heated dispute between his cameraman and his engineer when Clendenin, carefully leading Dr. McAndrews through a thicket of equipment, came into view. "Excuse me, Ira," he said apologetically. "May I interrupt you?" Ira, preoccupied with his warring technicians, looked at Clendenin and almost failed to recognize him. "Oh, it's you," he said. "Yeah, wait a couple of minutes. I've got to get this settled." "Of course," murmured Clendenin and stepped back, while Ira handed down his judgment and sent the cameraman and engineer, both unsatisfied but at least docile, back to their jobs. Then Ira turned to Clendenin. "How good to see you again, Ira," said Clendenin with a pleasant smile and a correct, unfulsome handshake. Ira shot him a curious glance. No chicky baby, no tall buggy, no parade of teeth, no effusive palpation of shoulder and nape. Why the disguise, wondered Ira. This, continued Clendenin in a tone respectful yet unservile, is Dr. Andrew McAndrews. Ira looked at the newcomer and understood at once the reason for Clendenin's false face. McAndrews was definitely the wrong type to Chicky Baby. It was not that the old doctor lacked humor. Laugh lines were deeply etched around his mouth, and the twinkle of wit stood plainly in his eyes. But even more plain was his authority. It was clear at first sight that here was a man patient, polite, even courtly. But what he knew, and he would not suffer fools. I can't tell you, Doctor, how pleased I am to have you on this program, said Ira. He offered McAndrews his hand and received, in return, 5 strong, clean fingers that could, with equal assurance, build a stone fence or suture a bile duct. The pleasure is all mine, said McAndrews, and on his lips the tired old phrase seemed new and true. Now, sir, your opponent tonight is Dr. Clara Salenko, a formidable woman, as I'm sure you found out when the 2 of you were on the Surgeon General's panel. McAndrews chuckled. I found it out long before the Surgeon General's panel, he replied. It happens that Clara was once my student. In fact, she's the brightest student I've ever had. Well, said Ira, pleased. I didn't realize. Oh, yes, I've known Clara for 30 years. First-rate doctor, excellent researcher. Too bad she's a nut. Nut, said Ira, eyebrows rising. It's a medical term, meaning nut, explained McAndrews. I've heard the term, said Ira. I just never thought to apply it to Dr. Salenko. Mr. Shapian, dedication is an essential part of any scientist's makeup. But when dedication becomes fanaticism, scientist becomes nut. Well, she does get a little passionate, admitted Ira. But on the other hand, she seems to have the facts to back up her opinions. There's more than one way to look at a fact, said McAndrews. Where will I find Clara? I'll take you over, Ira offered. No, said McAndrews, observing the tangle of men and machines around Ira. You've got enough to do right here. More than enough, it looks like. Do you actually expect to make a show out of all this pandemonium? One hopes, said Ira. Incredible, said the doctor, impressed. Well, I'll get out of your way. Tell me where to find Clara. Out that door and across the quadrangle, the big modern building with all the glass. You can't miss it. McAndrews nodded. I'll catch up with you gentlemen later, he said, and walked away with long, erect strides. When McAndrews was safely out of sight, Clendenin flung off his cloak of austerity. Well, chickie baby, he cried, rubbing Ira's neck with gleeful vigor. What do you think of my Dr. McAndrews? I think you picked a winner, said Ira. I also think you're choking me. Clendenin's hand slid from Ira's neck to Ira's back, where it delivered an assortment of frisky pinches and pummels. You bet your sweet Nielsen I picked a winner, he crowed. I don't care how tough your Salenko is. My boy will chew her up like gum. Fine, said Ira. Now stop massaging me before you get to the prostate. Sorry, doll buggy, said Clendenin, removing his hand. It's just that I got all excited when I think of the Emmy we're going to carry home. But I'm thinking way beyond this show. I'm thinking of the next 7 years. Big years, Ira baby. Big projects, big deals, big scores. You and I, Ira doll, you and I together, pussycat, for 7 fat years. There suddenly descended upon Ira a sadness, as black and stifling as the hood which is slipped over the head of a hangman's victim. He, too, saw the 7 years ahead, the finagling, the lying, the crud. In just a few hours, the Acanthus telecast would go on the air, and Ira's Sundance would be ended. His subscription to manhood would expire. Clendenin, would you excuse me, please, said Ira. I've been looking at you for almost 10 minutes. That's all I can stand at one time. Clendenin gave an understanding nod. That's the way I affect most people. In fact, some cop out within 5 minutes. I'm going to my office and hide now, said Ira. Please do one thing for me. Get your snooping over with as fast as you can and leave my stage. I must get back here and go to work. Sure, chickie baby. Ira left the gym, lurched across campus, entered his office, and sat at his desk, staring silently at the white telephone and the black telephone and seeing neither. He did not curse Clendenin. How could he? Clendenin was not the villain of the piece. The villain, the rogue, and peasant slave was no one but Ira, spineless, gutless Ira, former male. Oh, Boo, he thought with a surge of wistfulness. Boo, where are you? Where is your purity so pure, your strength so strong, that for a moment it nearly brought back my own? Are you forever out of reach, Boo? Am I to sink helplessly into the mire, so defeated I cannot even try once more to grasp the hand that would save me? No, shouted Ira aloud, and brought both fists down on his desk with such furious determinations that the telephones jumped 24 inches straight up. Ira seized the black phone in midair. He dialed Boo's number. Nostrils flaring, he listened to the ringing at the other end of the line. Hello, said Boo. Listen, I'm not supposed to call you. I know that, said Ira, the words cascading from his mouth. I know that. I know it, but I've got to. Do you understand? I must. As a matter of fact, Ira, I had just made up my mind to call you, said Boo. Do you understand, Boo? Cried Ira, not hearing her. I've got to talk to you. Got to. Please, please, don't hang up. I won't, Ira. Remember those things I said last time I saw you about leaving Paulie and quitting my job and working for Linus Calloway? Do you remember? Of course. Well, Boo, I know that if I don't do it now, right now, I never will. I know that without you by my side, Ira paused. Some words of Boo's, delayed in transmission, had suddenly arrived. What did you say, Boo? He asked. When, dear? Just a minute ago. Did you say you were about to call me? Yes, dear. Boo, I'm so happy. I am so very. He paused again. Elation was abruptly stilled. Why, Boo? He asked cautiously. Why was I going to call you? Yes, Boo. I have to see you, Ira, as soon as possible. I'm going out to the beach house this evening at 6 o'clock to talk to a man who's building a new jetty. I'll surely finish with him in a half hour or so. Could you meet me out there at 7 o'clock? How can I, Boo? At 8 o'clock I'm doing the telecast from Acanthus. That's right, I forgot, she said. All right then, how about this? I'll wait at the beach house and you can meet me there when you finish the telecast, okay? But you'll miss the program. You don't have a TV set at the beach. I know, Ira, and I'm terribly sorry, but this is more important. Please, please, my darling, I have to see you tonight. Elation came galloping back to Ira. Yes, tonight, he cried. Tonight, yes. At the beach house. Yes, my darling. Yes, my good, sweet. Elation made another quick retreat. What do you mean you have to see me? He said warily. Do you mean it's like an emotional need? For example, when two lovers are kept apart for a length of time, there's a certain psychic compulsion to be reunited? Is that what you had in mind? Ira, I can't talk anymore. There are people in the house. Wait, he insisted. I just want to clarify this one point. It boils down to those words, have to. Could you possibly be a little less ambiguous? Ira, goodbye. Please, listen, the beach house, tonight, all right? Fine. Now, Boo, what I'm getting at. Boo's phone clicked dead. Ira hung up his telephone. He sat and tried to be two men, one of them magically empowered to look into the soul of the others. These questions he asked himself. Why, after deciding he had to call Boo, why, after receiving the joyful tidings that she too had to call him, why, after such a happy return of resolution and hope, did he now feel panic slithering around his innards? Was he so totally degutted that courage had no place to cling to? Was he doomed forever to burrow like a blind, defenseless thing in the safe, dark muck? Was that all that remained of Ira Shapian? Calmly, without haste, again and again, Ira asked himself these questions, but no answers were vouchsafed to him. The fruitless interrogation was interrupted by a buzzing of the phone on Ira's desk. Yes? It was the assistant director calling from the stage. Ira, listen, I've got a big problem. You too, said Ira wryly. What a coincidence. Could you get over to the stage right away? That depends, answered Ira. Is Clendenin still there? Just left. I'll be right over. Ira started across the quadrangle to the gym. He had no doubts he would solve whatever problems awaited him on the stage. As for the deeper, knottier tangle that fouled his life, he had doubts aplenty, even though the solution lay in his grasp. He had only to make one simple, quick decision tonight, and his course would be forever altered. But would he find the strength to make that decision? Or would this night be still another torment of agonized vacillation? He did not know. He plainly did not know. That's it for this week. I'll see you next week as we continue with at least one more chapter.